JD Vicarja, it's my Ainle Cairealla, and it is webinar time. Tonight I'm going to be going through what it takes to become a complete hurler, everything from your strength and conditioning, your skills training, your learning from matches and letting that guide your training, your nutrition, your recovery. And I'm going to give us a really good insight into the Ainle system of training that we use here with our athletes at our training facility in Cork. And I'm also going to show you things that I've learned through personal experience and professional experience and from different people along the way, and you might start to see the different influences from separate disciplines on our system of training. So I'm going to go into a couple of slides here, and of course you can listen back to this on audio and you won't have to rely on being able to see the slides. If you want to do that, that's cool. And I really hope that you get a good insight here into the different aspects of the things that it'll take to become a really good hurler, and hope it starts a bit of a conversation in terms of what we can do to get more from the game, give more back to the game if you're a coach, and really enjoy ourselves a bit more, put a bit more of a challenge in there from a physical and mental point of view, recover better. So I hope you enjoy it and hope you take something from it, and I'm looking forward to hearing some feedback and some questions afterwards. One of the first things that I want to do for you tonight is just give you a quick introduction to myself. Some of you might know me through working with the Cork senior footballers, or through Ainle, or even just through hurling throughout the years. My name is Ainle Cairealla. I'm originally from Belfast, and 2 years ago I started Ainle, which is a training facility at the minute based in Cork. And my goal for Ainle was really to build a facility and a service that brought a much higher standard of coaching, an element of sports science, and a level of training that just isn't available at the minute. And it really, I suppose, it's the culmination, and it's ongoing as well, of the last 10 years since I've started really studying in the sports science area and strength and conditioning and different elements from other disciplines as well that have influenced my outlook quite heavily in certain aspects. As I said, I'm originally from Belfast. I played for Cumbernauld Paul whenever I was 10 years old, so that's 20 years ago. Only a few weeks ago, I had some very strong, influential coaches that brought me through the club. And I remember the very first coach that I had was Seamus McGahey, John Crossy, the late great Paul Crossy, and the legend that is Jim Nelson had a big influence on my hurling career as well. And when I was about 18, I went to UL, played down there, and then I played for Antrim the whole way up through the ages and senior as well, and then eventually ended up down in Cork playing hurling for the Piercy. And at the minute I'm focusing on getting the business set up there, really a place where it really is the absolute best training facility in the country, giving the best programs and the best care to our athletes and other people that train with us as well. So as opposed to go back to the very beginning, I think that where I originally came from in West Belfast has had a massive influence on my outlook on hurling and my outlook on building a business and on life, I suppose, in general, because of the fact that it was an area that was embroiled in conflict, you could say, whenever I was young. And things like hurling, I suppose, weren't really taken for granted, in that you couldn't go into the city centre with your hurling stick or with your Antrim jersey on for fear of getting chased or beat up. Same with the school uniform, and indeed the GA and the Irish language community, which I come from in West Belfast, are very strongly connected. And the fact that we didn't have recognition for our school and always felt like we were part of a bigger mission, and didn't take our schooling for granted either, meant that we had maybe a different outlook on the way the sport that we played, the language that we spoke, and the way that we carried ourselves from a day-to-day basis. And I've kept that with me the whole way through, and it's still a very strong presence in my life. So I think that's had an influential effect from in a positive way, I think, on my outlook on training and the different things that I do in my life. So I suppose that's a bit of an introduction. So I'm going to run through a few different elements with you today for the purpose of this webinar. I really want to cover the strength and conditioning side, because that's probably the easiest place to start. And I want to talk a bit about skills training, which outside of the team context is probably one of the lesser dealt with areas. We have strength and conditioning coaches all over the country now, and not to say that each is as good as the next one, but they are 10 a penny these days because of the volume of strength and conditioning certifications that are out there, and I suppose the way that it's come into the game, the modern game in recent times, it has gotten very popular. So there's kind of like a strength and conditioning boom in Ireland at the minute, even though I suppose for the large part we are still catching up on other sports and that are professional, and other countries that have developed they're a little bit further down the lane from a sports science and strength and conditioning point of view from us. Having said that, there are very, very talented people in Ireland, very good coaches, and some of the best people in the world in terms of strength and conditioning and sports science are from Ireland. So it's important to bear that in mind as well. I'm going to talk about the skills training in a way that maybe we haven't thought about before. In as much as, for the most part, whenever we're practicing our skills, and traditionally, it's mostly in a team setting, especially after the age of 16, 17, 18, whenever you haven't got all day to be out on the field pucking around, because that's probably where we build up the most foundation of our skills, is when you're out there with your mates or your brothers and your sisters pucking around all night long until it gets dark. After the age of about 18, that seems to fade away because we're in uni, or we're working, or we haven't got as much free time. So I want to deal with that because I think it's a really important area and a really, I suppose, untapped area of development for a lot of people outside of the team setting where the skills are performed very fast and under pressure. So we'll talk about that as well. Over the last 10 years, and I know especially over the last, I know from 2004, I've been really working on getting a nice tidy way of learning from each game in a way that's measurable, because my initial background is in sports science. I had an inclination to want to measure everything and be able to see the results of it. So I want to run you through a really nice system that I've put together for learning from games and how that will allow you to direct your training in the weeks and months after the games, so that you're working on the right areas, so that you're going to get the most bang for your buck from the training that you're doing. And then finally, I want to run through some basic nutritional concepts and some basic things about recovery, but I think that we're probably going to be doing the vast majority of the talking and the strength and conditioning skills and the learning from the games, and then we'll put a bit of nutrition and recovery stuff in at the end as well. So the strength and conditioning is the first area that I really want to deal with here. As I said, it's very popular and in this day and age, and everything from a strength and conditioning point of view is not the same. This is an example of the work that I did with the Cork senior football team last year, and this is over this course of about 4 months. The squad in general was 5% faster. The average body fat came down from 14.5% to 11%, and the vertical jump went up substantially. But most importantly, the injury rate that the Cork football team had last year was the lowest that they've ever had. We had minimal soft tissue injuries in terms of things that would just happen, say like rolling the ankle or pulling the hamstring or straining the quad. These things were reduced massively, and that has to be attributed in large part to the recovery that the players do, the strength and conditioning training that they do, and of course the training that they do on the field as well. But the strength and conditioning had a massive impact on that there. So the approach the thing that influences me probably most is the quality of movement that we're putting into strength and conditioning training and the movements that we do. This picture here is Ido Portal, who is I would go as far as to say he is world famous now for being a mover. And what a mover means is someone who's always trying to improve their movement and trains in a way where movement quality and the challenge of learning new movements is key. And this, I think, is the biggest area of misunderstanding and lacking when it comes to the traditional strength and conditioning training that we've been doing. And I say traditional, it's hard to say that insofar as it hasn't really been around that long, and it's still at an early stage for a lot of teams, even at inter-county level. The movement aspect of it, I think there's a lot to be brought into the GAA there, and there's a lot of areas there that you as an athlete can improve on and also that coaches can improve on as well. Just as an example, I know from personal experience in teams that I've been in, from talking to other people and knowing other coaches, and being in that area, being stuck into that area, that a lot of the training that GAA teams do, is not complementary to the training that the performance that they need to have on the field. In fact, I would go so far as to say that sometimes the strength and conditioning training that some teams are doing can actually be counterproductive for lots of different reasons. But for starters, I think that one of the big problems is that we tend to take the textbook and say, okay, this is the textbook and it says do X, Y, and Z, so we're going to go and do X, Y, and Z. But when you're dealing with a group of 30 players or 25 players, it's now impossible to do that, to just blanket program. That's on a very basic level. I can think of, if I know for a fact that if I had a group of 30 people in here right now and I was taking a textbook program, just whipping it out of the book and saying, okay, we're going to do Olympic weightlifting and we're going to do squats and cleans and bench press, that half of the team wouldn't even make it to the start of the season because they would be injured. Because I know for a fact through experience that the capacity to move, the capacity to squat, or the capacity to pick something off the ground with a technical proficiency, with enough technical proficiency to warrant putting a deadlift, something like a deadlift, into a program, in that the risk-reward ratio is going to be right. If the risk-reward ratio is skewed, and that if you do this movement and the reward is you might get a little bit stronger, but the risk is you're going to get injured, and that's massive because you're not moving properly, then that's a massive problem. So I think that that's a really important thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about your strength and conditioning as a hurler, or you're thinking about it in terms of your coaching as well, if you are coming from a coaching perspective. Just to run through a couple of examples off the top of my head, a lot of teams do circuit training, and that's all about banging out as many reps as you can, regardless of quality. At all, really, especially whenever the clock is running down and you're just banging out press ups there to beat the band, just to get a few more out there. And in the large part, we encourage this. When I look at GA players and hurlers in particular as well, but I suppose across the board, like, we're talking about bodies that are getting beat up on the field. We're talking about people who are sitting down a lot. We're all sitting down a lot, tight in the shoulders, tight in the chest, and training blind, like just whipping the training program out of a book and saying, right, this is it, this is what we're going to do. Bench press, bang it out, is just exasperating problems that we already have. Tight chest, you do bench press, your chest gets even tighter. You've got really tight hips and you haven't got the movement capacity to squat properly, but we're squatting heavy, or we haven't got the capacity to block off the back and hip hinge properly, but we're deadlifting. It just doesn't make sense. So really, for me, at a very basic level, before we go down the route of doing the explosive training and doing the jumps and the plyometrics and complicated sprinting drills and sprinting technique, we need to get the basics right. And the basics are a key component of the training system that we have up here at Ainle, and they are the ability to squat, the ability to pick something off the ground and hip hinge properly, so you know that you're using the hips, you can extend the hips, which transfers very well into running, and it protects the back as well and protects the hips. The ability to have strength while standing on one leg in a single leg squat or a pistol squat, and the ability to put your hands up over your head. I mean, that's massive. The ability to put your hands up over your head. Think about going up to catch a high ball, and if you haven't got the ability to directly get your arm over the top of your head without having to make a massive compensation in your back, in your lumbar back, because you're so tight around the mid back, that means that you're at risk straight away, because when you land, you're not landing in the right position. You're constantly compensating to get the hand over the head to make that catch. So that's a massive problem as well. And the ability to push and pull, of course, are very important. And that's, I suppose, where the whole idea of doing something like a bench press comes into it. However, the issue is that we're already way too far gone the other way. We're pushing too much, we're too tight in the chest, and pushing more is just going to make the problem worse than the posture. And when the posture goes, the way that you hold yourself when you run, or you go into a tackle, or you jump and you catch, is all messed up, because your centre of gravity is going to be put out. So it needs to be considered very carefully whether someone really needs to push that much, or whether they need a program that emphasises more on restoring the overhead range of motion, that is, being able to get your hands up over your head, or focusing more on the pulling motion, which will help pull the shoulders back and redress that tightness and that balance. So there's a real issue there. And just even to go down the route of mobility a little bit more, it just popped into my head, but wrist mobility is a massive thing for hurlers. And I've often suffered with wrist tightness and wrist pain, especially when things start hotting up during the season and you're hurling a lot, you're spending more time practicing your skills, you're striking more balls. And wrist mobility is a big thing as well, and that would probably be maybe an influence from the gymnastics side of things, and it's certainly something that had a strong influence with in my training with Ido and Ido's team and at the movement camp. The wrist health is massive, because probably of the fact that we work quite a lot on developing proficiency in the handstand. Then the wrist takes a lot of flack, and it's very important to keep the wrist healthy. And in experience, I think it's an area that we do neglect. We do neglect the wrists in hurling a lot, and because of the nature of the grip, and you're always gripping the hurl, that you do develop a very tight forearm, and that can cause problems at the wrist. So there are certain things that we do that we go through with hurlers to develop that wrist mobility and keep the wrists healthy, because it's much easier to prevent the problem than to try and fix it whenever the wrist is sore. Now, from an injury perspective, I guess I don't want to go down that route too much, but I had a really popular article up on the blog recently about injuries, and I think it's somewhere, I suppose with hurling and football and the GA in general, the whole area of injuries and overtraining has been in male and football, like it's been in the public eye recently, and it's always people are talking about it, and a lot of controversy around it as well. I suppose that ties in a lot with the strength and conditioning, because I think that the strength and conditioning takes the blame a lot of the time for this overtraining and the over professionalisation of the games. And that's a problem. It's a problem for coaches, it's a problem for players, because I don't think that it's a totally wrong thing to say, because in a lot of instances the strength and conditioning that people are doing is promoting them to get injured. It is adding to the load of the week, not taking away. It's not complementary. It's taken from the same well that you're taken from whenever you're playing matches or you're doing your hard running, and then you're into the gym and you're destroying yourself in there as well. That's always going to the same well, and you can't do that. The strength and conditioning for hurlers needs to be, especially during the season, but it needs to come from a different well. It needs to promote robustness and resilience in the body, and not break the body down, and not getting enough time to recover is probably a key contributor to people breaking down. But even if I just go back to the stuff that I was talking about at the very start of the strength and conditioning section here, when people are training and they're squatting and they're deadlifting and they can't do it properly because they haven't got the hip mobility or the mobility in their mid to upper back, or their shoulder range is very poor, it's locking the body into a position that it doesn't want to be in. It's locking the body into a position where it's ready to pop. It's going to get injured. And having a strength and conditioning program that encourages that is obviously less than desirable. But having, on the other hand, a strength and conditioning program that improves your hip range of motion in a way that's safe. It improves your ankle range of motion in a way that'll protect the ankles, it'll protect the knee, it restores that overhead range, gets you strong on one leg, and it doesn't compromise the integrity of the body in a way that it's not locking it into a crappy position. So you go off and play a game, and all of a sudden you're running into a 6'3" fullback who wants to chop your head off, and your body's already it's all tied up in a bad position. So that debate around the strength and conditioning and overtraining in GA it's interesting. It is very interesting. I suppose someone who's involved in the area of strength and conditioning, I would see it as if you know what you're talking about, if you're a strength and conditioning coach that knows how the body works, what the players need, and the load that the players are under, and how the body is supposed to move, which is an endless journey, then you can look at it and say, that person over there needs to do this. That person over there needs to do this. This person is not ready to load up on this exercise because they haven't got the mobility. And again, it's going back to that risk-reward ratio. If the risk is very high and the reward is nominal, then putting that in is a waste of time. Time is very precious, especially when we're talking about athletes like hurlers who need to spend a lot of time, a considerable amount of time, in a team setting, practicing skills on an individual level. Time in the gym is precious. It's absolutely precious. Therefore, the quality becomes more important, and doing the right stuff at the right time, in the right amount, is absolutely key. And you can't get that just from banging out a circuit training every so often. That'll give you a little bit of conditioning, but go back to that risk reward thing. You need to get something that's going to give you massive benefits because you're in there for a short space of time. And the other thing, I suppose, from a strength and conditioning point of view that's very important to touch on is the fact that it's looking at it as strength and conditioning as a separate entity to the rest of the training, I think is a mistake. It is a mistake, and this is why. Like, if you're looking at strength and conditioning and you're saying, okay, it's pre-season, I'm going to do my strength and conditioning now for 12 weeks, and then I'm going to go and start hurling, which is very common in teams. This is what is probably one of the most common problems in GA clubs and probably some county teams all around the country is, right, it's pre-season, let's run hard, let's train hard in the gym, and then, okay, the league starts, so let's start hurling now. That does not make sense. What we need to start doing as hurling players in this context, in the context of this webinar, is to start thinking more globally. Start thinking, I need to restore the body to move how it should move, smoothly, with nice range of motion, strong and stable, yet mobile, and keep it going as part of your life. Because remember, you're not going to be playing hurling or playing camogie for the next 60 years. If you're 20 years old, you're going to be playing for the next 15 or 20 years. You know, if you're 30 years old, you've probably got 5 or 10 years left. So you're still going to have the body. And it's a win-win situation, because when you look at it from a movement perspective and you're improving the movement quality and your training is based around that, and you have the mindset that it's not something that you do in the pre-season, or it's not something that you do for half an hour a week whenever you're playing, that it's something that you're always doing and you're moving well and it's part of your mindset, you're going to have a healthy body that's going to support a much higher level of performance and make you a much more resilient person and a much more resilient athlete. And also, it's going to keep you healthy for years to come. If you look at older, let's say, hurlers from the last generation, a lot of them are limping around and did the heavy training, running around the pitch, doing laps in the heavy ground, up and down fields. And if you even look at some of the teams that really had big breakthroughs, for example, the Clare team of the mid-90s, it's impossible to sustain that level of intensity. It's not just about, of course, Clare won the All-Ireland and that was good, but it's not just about that year, it's about all the other years, and you need to think of that, especially when you're thinking about it as an individual, because at the end of the day, you need to have a strong measure of personal responsibility and a strong mindset to keep on developing in years to come, because of the fact that managers change over so fast, coaches change every year, you could be moving up to a different age bracket, and look long term in terms of your health and where you want to be in a couple of years' time. But also know that the quality of movement is what's going to make you a better athlete. It's the foundation. Running, building up a really strong aerobic base by running on the road, running up down hills, that's not the foundation as people would have thought. Oh, it's a pre-season, let's do 5 miles 3 times a week. That's not a foundation. That's so fragile and fickle a foundation that the first game of the pre-season, or the first game of the season, you could pull your hamstring. Like, the running doesn't improve that. But having quality movement does improve. It does improve your chances of not getting injured, and it gives you a solid foundation where there's just actually limitless potential when you start lifting and strength training when you have the movement capacity to do it, and they both go hand in hand. So for me, the strength and conditioning, that's where it's at. That is where it's at, is restoring movement quality, but in the form of taking it on as a lifestyle choice and as a mindset is going to really improve the quality of the output for you on the field, for sure. So keep on going with the strength and conditioning theme. Like, these are, generally speaking, generally speaking, the different periods of the year. And we've got the off season, we've got a time before Christmas, the pre-season, probably January, look for toxic leagues. Normally start around March for a lot of people, and then you have a bit of a transition between the league and the championship. And this is where the periodization comes in, the planning of the season, the planning of the training over the course of the season, so that you're peaking at the right time. And the strength and conditioning emphasis and the training emphasis, it changes somewhat as you move through them. However, the most important thing here is not to think in terms of the textbook. Oh, when you're coming up to championship, you're doing all your explosive stuff. Yes, okay, in theory that can work. But what you need to think of as a hurler is, what can you do to get the most benefit for the time that you're going to spend training. It's not about fitting a square peg, i.e. a standard training program from a book, into a round hole, you as an athlete. That's not going to work, because it's not even that, it's just not, you want to get the most from your training, so why would you go for things that are going to give you marginal benefits or medium benefits when there are other glaring issues that are going to give you massive benefits, make you a better athlete, make you more resilient, make you stronger, more injury proof, and make you move more efficiently, which is going to mean you're spending less energy on the pitch, which means that, it means that you're going to be firing on more cylinders. Think about it like this. I heard a good analogy. I don't know where I heard it, but I heard it maybe about a year ago now. But if you had a car and it had 6 cylinders, but only 3 cylinders were working, do you push the car and drive it like a lunatic on 3 cylinders to try and make it go faster, or do you get the other 3 cylinders fixed? The big things that are sticking out there, that they're the lowest hanging fruit, the obvious things, they fix them, and then the car is running smoothly and the engine's not under as much pressure and it's banging out way more horsepower. That's the way to do it, and that's the way you should look at your body, as opposed to saying, at this time of the year I need to be doing this, at this time of the year you need to be doing this. Go for the biggest bang for your buck, and it does take a knowing eye to know what that's going to be, because someone who knows how the body works and knows where the biggest risk areas are. And just on that, your biggest risk area are your injuries, your previous injuries. If you have been pulling your hamstring for the last 5 years, that's your biggest risk area, and that's where you should be putting a lot of your attention into getting that fixed. Find out what the hell is going on with it, and then train it, and train your body to move in a way that it's not putting the pressure on it all the time. I know from seeing countless numbers of hurlers and footballers and runners and all kinds of athletes what the common problems are. You need to be able to see them, identify them, and fix them. And you as a hurler need to be able to spend time, meaningful time, doing it. Like, to put this in context, it's not easy to change how your body works. It's not like 10 minutes a day for 3 days a week, or do this just before your training sessions, or do it for 12 weeks at the start. I've been training with Ido Portal and his team since January for 4 to 6 hours a day. A day. We'll say 2 to 6, probably 2 to 5.5, but 2 training sessions a day. And sometimes I think to myself, I'm doing this for 4 hours a day, and it feels like I'm bending my body in the ways that it just doesn't want to go, and it doesn't even feel like it's changing sometimes. So to put that in context with the type of mentality that we have around rehab and injuries, do it for 10 minutes a day, do this little small rehab exercise, this is going to fix it, walk around on your tippy toes, or do calf raises 3 sets of 10 3 times a week. That is absolute nonsense. It doesn't work. That's accumulating about 5 minutes or half an hour at most of doing something. That's not going to change the body. You're probably looking, when you're trying to rehab something like that, at reversing habits that have taken years to build up. So you're going to have to damn straight put some proper time into fixing it, most certainly, and that's your biggest risk area. So anyway, enough on the injury front for the minute, but just looking at this diagram here again, there are different periods of the season, and different periods of the season can have a different emphasis. For example, the off season is where really, as hurlers, you can get more of volume of training in there, and it would be my view that you need to get a lot of volume of movement training in there, strength training in the right way that's going to help support you through the rest of the season, get you moving more efficiently. It is a good time to work on your biggest weaknesses from the season before if you have identified those. And it's also a good time to work on things like your base fitness as well. But I think that the movement and the strength work needs to take a really big priority there, because at the end of the day, this is probably going to be the biggest opportunity that you have in the year to fix those issues, like the recurrent hamstring issue, or the sore back, or the limited shoulder range of motion, or that injury that you had that you're just not sure that's gone. This is the time to fix that. Pre-season then can carry on in a similar vein, depending what the club schedule is, but the type of running that we're doing there is important, in that we do need to step away from the same old running, which a lot of people are still doing, just going off for a big slow jog and pounding the pavements and what have you and whatnot. And I think we also need to step away from that high intensity circuit training when the base isn't there of movement quality, so that the quality is very low, and as we said before, the time is precious. Skills training is going to become very important in the pre-season, and again, if we're talking about volume, this is where you can build the volume of your individual skill training, which we'll touch on in a little bit. League, okay, so from a strength and conditioning point of view, the sessions might fall down a bit, maybe to twice a week in the gym, but if you've adopted that mentality of being a mover and moving consistently all the time and adopting it as a lifestyle choice, then you walk down the street and there's opportunities to move absolutely everywhere. And to say the satisfaction that you'll get from this, the benefit in terms of mental stimulation, physical development, balance, something else, a different type of a challenge, can't be understated. So when it comes into the period where the matches and the trainings are going to start coming hard and fast, then having that mentality of a mover is going to be absolutely priceless, because you're going to recover faster and keep on building strength when others are going to start to stagnate. The transition period between the league and the championship, there's often an opportunity here to top up really by going back in to more strength work, a bit more conditioning work, and then tapering off for the championship. And we know that the championship, the hurling is key here, and the team mechanics, the tactical stuff and the technical stuff, and I want to chat about the skills work later on. So that's just a brief overview of the way that a season could be structured, not in the sense of this is how it has to be for every single person, but just broadly speaking. And then within that, then you've got the individual needs and also the biggest bang for a buck kind of concept as well that's going to apply. Different people are going to have different things that'll get them the biggest bang for their buck along the way. And of course, the fitness testing is another aspect of it. I've went on quite a bit now about the strength and conditioning so far, and I'm conscious that I want to get some other things covered. Testing is useful if you're doing it in the right way, it's done consistently and it's repeated, and that it influences what happens in the training. That is the key thing about fitness testing. There's no point in doing a fitness test or getting tested in a way that does not impact the way that you train. It has to impact the way that you train, and you have to be able to come back and say, boom, it's better. The training program worked. I'm a better athlete. I'm moving better. I'm ready to go. That's important, and that's all I'm going to talk about there from the testing point of view. I want to move on and talk a little bit about the skill work. And for me, this is probably my favourite part to talk about in this webinar. Obviously, what attracts us, one of the biggest things that attracts other people to the game of hurling and attracts us to the game of hurling are the skills and the variety of skills and the richness of them, and the whole range of blocking, hooking, catching, striking, tackling, sideline cuts, frees. There's so many skills, so many bits of intricacy in the game of hurling, and that's one of the things that makes so much of us fall in love with the game. And I think I really understood the importance of skill back in my days as an under 12 in St Paul's, and our coach John Crossy goes, can you hit the ball on both sides? If you can't hit the ball on both sides, you're only half a hurler, and there's no need, we don't have any need for half hurlers. So I was off down to the local council field to practice on my right hand side. Even though I'm right-handed, I learned how to hit the ball off my left for some strange reason. So I was learning how to hit it on my right, and within a few weeks I was getting pretty good. And another thing that John said at that time was that your hurling stick should be an extension of your arm, so you can play anywhere. And I actually remember listening to one of our teachers in school saying that in the schools in Kilkenny, all the boys bring their hurleys into their classroom and everything like this. And I was thinking, this is it. This is how it has to be. Practice, practice, practice. And then I read Gerard Nann's book and Justin McCarthy's book around the same time. Justin McCarthy's book, Hooked, was just, it really opened my eyes in terms of the practice that was the way of practicing that was out there that I could just do. Justin McCarthy was going to the ball alley all the time. He had a motorbike accident, broke his leg, was getting back into hurling through going to the ball alley and practicing the skills all the time. And I remember another one of our teachers saying, Nicky English, how he hit the ball up against the wall, and that DJ Curie's video, the DVD that he made that time, and he's hitting the ball off the gable wall. That was me. I wanted to do that all the time. And then the training, the manic training that the Clare team of the mid-90s did, it was just a massive eye-opener. How these people were taking the game so seriously. And I read this book whenever I was quite young, and I was like, yeah, this is where it's at. So, and in a lot of ways, that's probably what brought me to Limerick to study in UL, to do sports science, but to be able to play Fitzgibbon hurling, which I did for 4 years in UL, was a big part of that move as well. To be able to see what's going down there, because we were playing for Antrim and we were getting pumped all over the place. And I remember coming off the bus at Casement Park one time after coming back from Galway, and we were after getting hammered in the championship, and someone goes to me, do you think it's just because it's where we're from? And the thing I could remember back was Justin McCarthy's book saying, and Justin McCarthy's got a very strong affinity with Antrim hurling in particular, and he coached Antrim before, and I remember him saying, it doesn't matter if you're a plumber, it doesn't matter where the plumber's from, if he's from Derry or from Kilkenny, like the plumber can do just as capable a job as the next plumber. And I was thinking that's the same for hurling, but where's the catch? Then where is the catch? And I think for the weaker counties, and this is maybe going off topic a little bit, but there's bigger problems there than just people practicing their skills. But I felt like I didn't really have much control of that, but I did have control over the way that I was going to practice. and the effort and the concentration and the dedication I was going to put into my practice. So it really sent me down the path of learning different ways of practicing, different ways of getting better and improving. And in a lot of ways, probably that's maybe what made me seek out to come down to Cork. And this is me and my brother Cairealla at Rochestown Ball Alley, which is the same ball alley that Justin McCarthy was training in whenever he was coming back from his leg. I just wanted to be there and do it, and it's there, and I'm there regularly. At one of my favourite places to go to. And one time, myself and Cairealla were down there. We called into Justin's house, and he wasn't there. And his wife answered the door, and she says, "Oh no, he's not here. He's gone out for a cycle." And she heard her accent. She goes, "Where are you from?" And we were like, "Oh, we're from Belfast." Antrim men, come in. And we were in there for the rest of the day. We waited for 45 minutes before Justin came back, chatting away, and then we were there for the lunch. And I'd say, except that we excused ourselves, we would have been there for the dinner as well. But it was really good. And I guess the ball alley is a big place that can be utilised, and the things that Paddy Butler has been doing in recent years and encouraging people to get the wall balls put in is massive. But there's another element to it. For me, there is another element to it, and I think this would be an influence that I would have, say, from learning about martial arts and talking to martial artists and observing them and the way that they practice. And Bruce Lee is someone that I studied quite a lot, and for practice, he built this contraption to practice fighting. And as you'll notice, that wooden thing isn't going to fight back, but he's practicing his skills and his movement and the movement patterns. And if you look at other martial artists, if you look at boxers, don't spend all their time in the ring boxing the head off each other. You look at even the likes of Conor McGregor, is probably quite famous now for saying that he doesn't always train at full pelt in a fight, that he's training the movement and the flow of the movement and the movement patterns. And that's probably an area of the skill training that we can learn from as hurlers, in terms of ingraining the movement patterns of the skills deeper into the system. One of the things that really got me thinking down this lane was the book The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. I would definitely recommend it. It has a lot to offer anyone who wants to practice deep skill. And it just got me thinking of the way and how applying it to my say, growth as a hurler from a very young age. And I know that would mirror a lot of other people's growth as hurlers and how they became to play the game. So Daniel Coyle basically went around the world, everywhere and anywhere that had a talent hotbed, somewhere that was producing people of the highest standard. Like, he went to this tennis school in Russia that had produced more world champions than the whole of the United States, and he was going to music schools that were producing world-class performers again and again and again. And the place in Russia actually stood out big time for me, because it was this run-down tennis school with an old woman coaching the kids, and he walked in expecting to see like army like drills and things, and the kids were in practicing tennis, and they didn't even have a ball, in slow motion, like they were playing tennis in slow motion, and they were ingraining the skill into the system. So the model that I have up here of Daniel Coyle, from Daniel Coyle's book, is the first thing that we get is the ignition. This is very applicable to hurling. We all had I can remember being in Casement Park whenever I was 5 or 6, watching Sambo and the boys, letting whoever was against them have it for an hour. And I can remember going to Croke Park for the different games that Antrim played. They nearly beat Kilkenny. I think in '91 we went there against Limerick as well, maybe a couple of years after that. And that's the ignition. That's the thing that sparks it off. That when you just see something, you're saying like, this is it, I'm going to be a hurler. And that was me. And then you get master coaching when you're a kid. Like, that's when you're going to under 12, under 14, under 16. You're getting coaching and you're listening and you're sucking it in like a big sponge. You're just absorbing it. And then the deep practice is the area that comes whenever you're away from the coaching and you're by yourself and you're getting absorbed and practicing the skills on a very deep level. And this is where I think that there's a massive potential for improvement in hurlers, because when you think about it, a lot of our master coaching happens like between the age of 10 and 16, and then definitely after 18 it falls down. We're no longer really getting master coaching, because the 2 sessions a week, get in the door, you warm up, you're maybe doing a couple of ball drills, but it's at a very high intensity, and the success rate at those drills can be very low. You could be in there doing a drill against someone, and the success rate, if 10 balls, or say 20 balls come in, maybe, and you're competing against someone, neither of you might win none of them. It may be a 0% success rate. That's not deep practice, because no one's really learning anything there. You're just cancelling each other out. Same whenever you're always doing things at a very high intensity. A lot of the time, you're just cancelling each other out. You don't get the ball, the next person does get the ball, but you just come together and you're kind of in battle. For me, deep practice comes elsewhere, and it's an area that is totally neglected for the large part, because even if you think about it, for the most part, when you're pucking around, when you're out in the field on a sunny day, right, a lot of the time we just do the same thing over and over. You just hit the ball back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, do a little bit of shooting, But there's so many skills, it's such a large, vast amount of skills in hurling that we don't practice beyond the age of 12, 13. When's the last time you were out practicing your blocking or your hooking? Or when's the last time you've really practiced getting better at catching high balls? And how long have you practiced it for? Like 5 minutes before training? Let's go back to the example that we had earlier on about the volume of training that it takes to change a movement pattern. It's the same with the skills. You need to ingrain it, break the pattern down, slow. Someone who I know is a big advocate of this type of training is Donal O'Grady, and who arguably you could say kind of revolutionised the approach that hurling teams were taking with Cork in the early 2000s. Like, practicing skills, he had them going across, blocking, hooking without the ball in slow motion, and we need to do more of this. I worked over in Adelaide for the Adelaide Crows for a year, and this type of practice and developing the skills was present there. And it's a different situation because it's professional setup, and there's more time obviously to train and things like that. But even as amateur athletes, and I don't even think it applies that much, because of the fact that when we're playing we put so much into it, that finding time and making time to practice skills on a different type of a level for longer periods of time, I think is crucial, and is somewhere that we can really, really benefit from. And another example, just to go back to tennis again, or indeed any other sport, and it relates to the strength and conditioning side of things as well, and how we place that into the plan for hurling. Like, if you look at a tennis player, and if they're training for 10 or 12 hours, if they're training, just say, let's say for talk's sake, for 10 hours a week, which is very, very low, say, like, it'd be an amateur tennis player training for 10 hours a week, and all together for 10 hours a week. Out of those 10 hours, how many hours are going to be spent in the gym? Maybe 2, let's just say, which leaves 8 hours for tennis, 20% in the gym, 80% playing tennis. Think about hurling and think about your own training now. Think about how much time overall you spend training. Maybe 6 hours, 3 hours with the team, and 3 other hours. And I bet that maybe 2 to 3 of those hours could be potentially in the gym, 2 anyway, and the third maybe pucking around. So that's 3 hours with the team, 2 hours so that's 50% with the team, and about 40% in the gym, and 10% doing your own stuff. That the ratio, I think, is off, and there's a massive potential there to improve the amount of time and the quality of practice that we do as individuals. But again, it does take time. On the other hand, if you want to be the best, then getting the best way to practice and the most sustainable way to practice should be at the top of the list. That means doing things efficiently when you are in the gym, that time that you have, making sure you're doing the right stuff, and that you're being efficient and effective in the gym. It also means spending more time doing things that have been neglected, like finding the biggest areas for improvement, really looking after those injured areas. And I think that from a deep practice point of view, that there's a place in there for practicing in the manner of this, something that you can do for quite a long time without getting tired out, because you're not going flat out, instead of doing it all the time whenever you're getting beat up all the time, like a boxer, always boxing, always boxing, always boxing. Do train sustainably, and that's going to add in positively into that debate about overtraining and doing too much and not getting enough recovery time, because you can train and not be training at the edge all the time. In fact, you can train away from the edge for a much longer period of time than you can train at the edge, with much less danger of going over the edge. And when you go over the edge, then that's when the trouble really starts, and then you're trying to claw back the season and get yourself back into the game, and that's a whole different talk to have, and maybe a whole different webinar at some other time. So that's kind of a bit of a rundown in terms of the skill training, and I want to move on to learning from games. And this is, for me, a very interesting topic because of the fact that I can see, and from personal experience and from being in different setups, that when you're in a team setting, you're very much reliant on one person or maybe two people to give you the feedback on how you've performed. One person, and that's going to be the manager. And that's less than ideal whenever there's 30 people there. And I think that the biggest danger is, the biggest thing that happens for the most part, is that there's very little feedback given, constructive feedback to take from games, and things that you can really use to guide your training and improve yourself as a player. Because of the fact that resources are limited, one person is there and that person hasn't got the time or the manpower to be able to say, okay, this is what you did well in this game, this is what I want you to be able to do for the next one, this is what I want you to work on, to go around a full team. Some managers do, and some setups do have it, but even at the level of video analysis and GPS, I think that we're still missing out. There's things that are still missing out here, and there's still areas that you could use, and if you had the right tools in place, that you could get the information and act on it. And really, that's what it comes down to. See, GPS, video analysis, having people doing stats, it doesn't matter at all unless you've got a bit of information that you can act on. You could have reams of information, books full of information, or spreadsheets, but if you haven't got the ability to act on it and do something productive that's going to improve your game, improve yourself, then it's absolutely pointless. It's a waste of time, a waste of money, a waste of resources. So what I want to say to you today is that it's personal responsibility that you need to take to make sure that you get the information from the game. If you want to improve, if you want to get stuck into this game like it's a vocation, like it is a vocation, like you need to get stuck into it, like you're learning as much as you can. You're like a student of the game, and therefore you need to learn, and you need to get a method of being able to extract the information from a game, regardless of whether it's offered up or not by the management team. It's individual responsibility, and I don't mean to sound like I'm coming down on management teams, but there's just resources aren't there. So if you're a player and you're listening to this, then I'm saying to you is there's a way that you can take the personal responsibility on that's not too time consuming, that's not too difficult to work out, and it can be done very consistently and measured over time so you can see your progress, and it guides the training. And this is something that I have been working on since my first year in the University of Limerick. And what I remember the time that it kicked off, it was like a little spark that we had a lecture from somebody from the National Coaching Training Centre, the NCTC, it's now Coaching Ireland, and they gave us a talk, and they had the woman had this training diary that had pages in it, you could flick through it, and it had little markings of how to track your day, how to track performance. And after I was sitting in the lecture with my mouth open saying, I need to get that training diary. So after the lecture, I said, look, is there somewhere I can get one of those books? And she said, well, no, but you can have this one. It's out of date. And I was like, sweet. So I went home straight away, and I got on the computer and I started making my own one straight away. And if I could show you a picture now of the shoe boxes that I have full of these training diaries, I was making them to beat the band. I was evolving. It was changing all the time. I wanted a way I could track my training sessions every day, how I felt, how did I sleep, how did I eat, how did I play. How did I play was the big one, and that's been the one that stuck the whole way through. As well as measuring the training load and stuff, that's a whole other story. But the one I want to talk to you about is the being able to measure what you've done in a game. So I've been developing this spreadsheet over a long time. I've used it myself, and actually I have to say that one of the things that influenced me in this spreadsheet and sparked me on to keep working on it was watching a documentary about the great Cormac McAnallen, and there was a bit in it about how he tracked his progress in games, and it was a handwritten kind of a table marking off the scores for each game, and that really added fuel to the fire. I was like, right, that's it. I'm going to keep working on this. And I used to do it manually, and I've got it for dozens and dozens of games, and now I've got it on Excel, and it's a nice tidy system, and I'm just going to show it to you here. So this is just a snapshot of part of the spreadsheet. But basically what it is a tracking of different elements, physical elements, technical elements, and the statistical elements of the game, and then coming up with a score and get a red light, an orange light, or a green light at the end. But the key, and another influence, that's a thing that has influenced this, is the performance profiling from a sports psychology perspective. A very good way of identifying where the weak point is, what needs to be worked on. So I know that overall, if I'm getting around the 60s, I'm in a red light. I'm getting in around the 70s, I'm in orange. Anything above 80, I'm in the green. And I've got a score, a performance score every single match that I can say, right, I got 70 the last time I did. I need to work on my tackling, or I need to work on my blocking. So that's the weakest point. And next week I'm going to go off, and this is what I'm going to go do: X, Y, and Z. I'm going to spend this amount of time practicing blocking, because that's the weak area that's the weak area in my performance. I can do that. Like, that's like a gift. That's someone saying, this is the thing that you need to improve. This is the thing that you need to do to improve it. And when you do it and you go back and play the next day, you're not going to be getting a 4 out of 10 for your blocking, because you're going to have improved it, and you're going to have spent 4, 10 or 15 hours on improving your blocking, breaking it down, practicing it in a way that we talked about, practicing the skills, and then implementing it on the field. That's key. I think that is key. And another key thing about this spreadsheet is to always document something about the game that you enjoyed, even if you got a crappy score at the end. Even if you've got, like, say, 40 out of 100 for your performance percentage, that you get something that you enjoyed, pick out something that you want to improve on, and document some action to take afterwards. This is an ongoing process, and really, this is a really handy resource that I use with my athletes, and I use it myself as well, and also the key thing is the knowing what to do afterwards, knowing what actions to take, and what you have to put in place, and when you're going to put it in place, where you're going to put it, what amount, and what form it's going to take, the intensity and everything like that, so that it fits in really well with the rest of the training program. That, for me, is a massive tool, something that gives you that ability to take the information from the game and use it efficiently, so that you can go and let it direct your training, so that you're training mindfully and purposefully, as opposed to training mindlessly and without a purpose, which is what I think is is probably the biggest problem that we have. We're training in the gym. We're just doing it for the sake of someone said do it, so we're just doing it. You're going for a puck around. I don't know. We're just pucking around. We're just hitting the ball over and back for an hour. like you could be doing something more useful there. Oh, stretching, just stretching because like it's good to stretch, it feels good. Like, do something that's mindful, that has a purpose. Time is precious. Time is very precious, and doing the wrong things is a waste of time. So you got to learn what things are that are the right things to do, and do those. That's key. So I want to briefly move on to talk about recovery, and maybe a little bit about nutrition as well. So recovery for me is a key part, and I've heard it said. A good friend of mine, who's a coach with Munster Rugby, has said numerous times that the problem often isn't overtraining, but under recovery. And whenever I was over with the Crows, and my brother Cairealla was there for a year with the Crows also, we did witness a strong emphasis on recovery, a very strong emphasis on recovery. And I guess there's a lot of things out there that have been popular, maybe not as popular anymore. For example, the ice baths. At one stage, everyone was getting into the freezing cold ice baths, and there's for and against with that type of treatment. But I think that the key thing that I'm going to say now is just maybe slightly repeat myself, but putting the responsibility back on you as an individual to get a really good recovery protocol on the go. What are you going to do after the game, straight away, half an hour after the game, the next day after the game? And maybe even just to give you the overtraining versus under recovery is a good way of putting it. And I think just broadly speaking, we can probably say that we train Tuesday, Thursday and play a match on Saturday, or Wednesday, Friday, play a match on Sunday, something like that. Monday is often a free day, and I think that should be the day that we as hurlers, GA players, should do the recovery, most of our recovery time. And excuse me, that we need to have a nice little tidy protocol that we do on day, and the training that we do on Monday is recovery oriented, a mobility flow, or a pool session where you're doing something productive in there. After the game, then, it's very important to have a nice tidy recovery protocol. One of our members, Michael Minahan, recently ran from Mallinhead to Mizenhead solo, 15 marathons in 15 days, and I think that he would agree to say that his recovery process after each marathon was one of the key contributing factors to what made him actually be able to get to the end in one go. 15 marathons in 15 days, and his recovery protocol was like clockwork. Food straight away after matches and training, that you've got your nutritional protocol set up, that you're rehydrating after games, that it's easy to do recovery is important as well, that you've got things at hand, you've got foam rollers at hand, you've got a mobility flow all ready to rock and roll. All you have to do is take a piece of paper out or the video that you've recorded of yourself and just go through the motions of it and just make sure that you're doing the movement. And it ties in also to that concept that we mentioned earlier of taking movement as kind of a lifestyle choice and as a mindset. So movement, that you're moving all the time and you're doing the right movements after training, and that's really going to help to boost your recovery process. Now, from a nutritional point of view, the nutrition and the recovery tie in pretty much, they go hand in hand. And the key periods of time where you need to concentrate on the nutrition are the week before, the day before, right before half time, and straight away afterwards. And what you eat there has a strong influence on your performance and also on your recovery time. Now, this diagram is applicable only if, or mostly if, the rest of your nutrition is good. It's not to say that it starts the week before a game. You can start eating the good stuff. You need to be eating the good stuff all the time, and building healthy habits is the key to performing well and recovering well. And making sure that you're getting that good breakfast in, that you're eating whole, unprocessed foods 90% of the time, that you're getting enough of each macronutrient in, carbohydrate, fat, protein, in the right form like natural food for the most part. Just to maybe give a quick run through of things that you can do in these 5 different stages that I've highlighted for you here today. Like the week before, that's a good time to load up on the carbohydrates the few days before a game. Having said that, it's objective as well, but it is a good time, as in it'll work for some people, it won't work for other people. It depends what you're comfortable with, and it also depends on what foods that you're able to take on. Because certainly you don't want to be eating loads, eating too much the week before a game and not being able to train properly, or being bloated whenever you're going training, and that puts you off as well. The day before, very, very individual. Certainly getting enough of your carbohydrate and protein and fat in on the day before, but it's really, really individual again. It's very hard to give guidelines when we're doing this type of stuff, but I just wanted to highlight the different points, the different times where you should be focusing on getting something set for each of these times. Right before, depends. Like some people like to take a caffeine supplement or something, a caffeine containing drink. Sugar does the job for a lot of people. Others just drink water because it'll upset the stomach. Half time, exactly the same. And then afterwards, this is when the real recovery stuff starts. You need to have something, fruit or something, to get the recovery process started straight away afterwards, and then have the hydration started immediately after the game, and then getting your main meal in as soon as possible. The thing actually that I wanted to touch on very briefly is supplementation. I think that there's an idea out there that you have to be supplementing with something if you're going to be playing some kind of sport, but I'm going to just go back to the concept that I had earlier with the strength and conditioning about going for the areas of biggest possible improvement first. And I would 7 times out of 10, the biggest area of improvement for people is to improve the global nutrition habits that they have, making sure that the breakfast and on a day-to-day basis, that you're getting the right stuff in and the right amounts at kind of the right time, that's sustaining your recovery and your training efforts consistently. Because it's very easy to fall into a state of being undernourished and training where you're not getting a full recovery. You're kind of training at a lower level compared to what you would be if you were getting the right stuff. And then when you do go and play a big game, then you're even at a lower level afterwards. So you need to make sure that you're getting the basics right first. And again, maybe that's a different talk for a different day about how we can do that. And then after that, where does it bring us in terms of supplementation, or what are the ones that are most effective, or the ones that we should stay away from? So that's another area for sure. But in generally speaking, you're going to be getting 90% of the benefit that you need from food, actual food, and your daily habits and your routines, and a very small percentage from your supplementation. Supplementation, it's called that for a reason. It should supplement your main diet, and your main diet needs to be really good to have it. Say you only want to have it maxed out before you start supplementing with something, because of the fact that that's where the most improvement can be made for the least amount of effort, and probably for the least amount of money as well. But building those routines are going to sustain you for your hurling career and well beyond that also. So I have one question in about the use of creatine as a supplement and is useful for hurlers. And certainly, it's a good question. Certainly there's a lot of research that supports the use of creatine and shows it as being beneficial. At the same time, it very much depends on the individual. Just going back to the concept of going for the biggest improvement and taking the low-hanging fruit first, it would very much depend on the rest of the diet and what it's like, and if there's any big gaps or weaknesses in the diet as is, first of all, and then looking at the supplementation. Certainly from a recovery point of view, there have been benefits shown with creatine in the research, but whether to take it or not depends very much on the individual. Another question about tightness in the upper back. mid back, mid upper back. This is very common. This is one of the most common things that I see. And yes, it can be fixed. Yes, it does require effort and it does require guidance in the right direction, doing the right things. But that issue, especially for a hurler, is a problem because of the fact that it's kind of like a rotational sport. Like if you're missing that thoracic extension or the thoracic mobility, then it's going to have a negative impact on the way that you carry yourself, and the way that you strike the ball, and the way that you put your hands up over your head, and even down to the way that your hips are positioned. So can potentially put you at risk of a really bad hip injury as well, depending on the severity of it. For sure, there's things that can be done. Obviously, it's hard to show them in this situation in the webinar here, but there are plenty of stretches and mobility extras that you can do. It really does require consistent effort over time, and so do it in a way that you can measure the progress. And actually, that just brings me on to a really good point, and something that's worth mentioning is that when it comes to things like that, when it comes to improving mobility in a certain area, one of the best ways that you can do it is take it on as a project, like an experiment, for a set amount of time, and put a protocol in place for a set amount of time and say, right, this is the problem, this is what I'm going to do to try and fix it, and I'm going to do it for X amount of hours each week for X amount of weeks, and then I can measure it by doing this, and then come back at the end and see, well, did it work? If yes, then happy days, your problem is fixed. If not, then there's something else going on, and you need to find out what it is. Generally speaking, from a personal point of view, I prefer to go straight to the solution as opposed to doing too much trial and error there. You know, there aren't too many things out there that are totally unique to us as individuals. Someone pulls their hamstring, they haven't pulled their hamstring in a totally unique way that no one else has ever done before, despite what that person or what you might think. You know, things are common. I see so many people that I see the same problems repeating. The tight mid upper back is one of them, and limited shoulder range comes along with that, and a whole host of other problems. So I would prefer to, get the right information first. That's, I suppose, why I train with Ido Portal and his crew, that I know that they're the best in terms of what I want to get out of that. So I go straight there. It's not, it's not like I went to Thailand to train with them for a week, which wasn't a thing that I could just do easy peasy, take 2 weeks off, fly across the other side of the world and train for a week or 2 weeks. But if you want to be the best, then you go straight to the top, you find it. And taking things on a project basis like that is a really nice way of fitting that in. So the other question was in relation to carb loading or getting ready for championship. I think I touched on it very briefly just when we talked about the nutrition stuff. For sure, there's a school of thought there that would suggest that the carb loading is beneficial coming up to a game. Having said that, hurling the way it goes is an intermittent game, lasts about an hour, and you've got 15 minutes in between. So really, I suppose it's about eating what you're comfortable with, making sure you have enough fuel to sustain yourself, but not the same as going to do a marathon for 3 or 4 hours where you're going to be depleting your glycogen stores big time. So the carb loading, I think, doesn't really have that much of an impact on your whether you do it or not, as long as you have enough in there to get you through the game. And we will have enough in there anyway. Caffeine drinks and supplementation are a potential area there that I know that some people use. Then again, it's very much an individual thing, whether you deal with it, whether it gives you dry mouth or makes you run to the bathroom, or if there are any medical issues that will prevent you from doing that. But I know that some people have experimented with that and found good results, where others have experimented with it and said, no, it's not for me. So I hope that answers your questions. And if there are any more questions, certainly send them on to me. I'll do my very best to get back to you and answer them. You can send them on email or stick them up on the Ainle Facebook page, and I'll look forward to seeing those. And certainly share this video around. with anybody who you think would be interested. And I really enjoyed sitting here for the last while talking about hurling, one of my favourite things in the world. It's been very pleasurable, and I'm looking forward to doing another one, maybe on a different area of the game, and really getting even a bit more of a discussion, a bit more of a conversation going. So, Sinead McCarja, Slán go fáil agus tá súla go mé muidir caint le chéile arís go luath.